In today's video, let's delve into the dark and mysterious world of dark academia decor as I show you how to create a butterfly terrarium cloche. So a few years ago, Michael had the most beautiful butterfly-like terrarium cloche, and I really wanted it. But unfortunately, it sold out before I could get my hands on it. And for years, I've just been waiting for them to bring it back, and they haven't. And so I decided it was time to get creative and make my own. And of course, bring you along with me. So that is what we're going to be doing in today's video. And I knew to pull this off, the first thing that I needed to do was find the perfect rounded cloche. And I found the best one on Amazon. This cloche is under $20 on Amazon, and it is so perfect, not only for something like this, but I'm hoping to kind of change this up through the seasons, maybe do some kind of a crystal ball and even a snow globe. So this works out perfectly for all of that. And because I really wanted this to show off, and I decided I wanted to put it on top of my pantry, I knew that to really do that properly, I needed to make some kind of a base to do so. So that's where we're gonna start today. Let's talk about the materials I'm going to need. So I have 3 of these 7-inch rounds that you can pick up from Walmart for $1 a piece. I will have them linked below. Then there's this weird little furniture arm thing I picked up from Lowe's. I don't know its name or original purpose, but I paid a little under $5. I'm also going to be using a bundle of beads that I found on clearance at Walmart for $3, and then some small wooden beads that I got at Dollar Tree. In addition to these, I will also be using glue, a small nut, a drill gun, as well as various bits, black paint, and P220 sandpaper. I also used some iron-on trim that you aren't going to see right now, and that is because I found I needed it at a later time. I like to start out by sanding any kind of wood products that I'm using just because I hate splinters. So that's what we're going to do first. It's time to grab the drill because we are going to be putting a hole into the center of 2 of these rounds. Now, one I'm just going to use the small bit on, and the other I'll start with the small bit and then I'll follow up with a larger bit. And it fits the size of the screw that's built into the little wooden arm that I'm going to be using. You will see how it just screwed in perfectly, but I do recommend following up with a nut on the other side just to help secure it. You won't see me doing that on camera because I learned that when my cats knocked it over and I frankly had to put it back together. So learn from my mistakes. I also used a small drill bit to make a hole in the top of that wooden arm so that I can screw one of the rounds into the top of it. In case you're new here to my channel today, I want to take a second to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Jackie, and this is my magical home. A place where you can find all kinds of content. Some days we're going to be making DIYs. Other days it's decorating or holiday decor. And there's even days we're going to be doing movie nights or even organizing the house, because sometimes we all need a little extra inspiration to do those tedious tasks in life. And I hope that you will consider joining my YouTube family and hitting that subscribe button down below. It is time for the beads, and I'm going to start out with that round where we screwed the larger hole into it, and I'm going to take the small beads I picked up from Dollar Tree and just glue them all the way around the outside of this round. And I'm going to try to keep them as close to the edge as possible, and this is just going to create a really cute layering effect. Now it's time to take that unfinished round, and I am going to take 4 of the large beads from Walmart and I'm going to just glue them to the bottom of this. I tried to kind of space them out to the best of my ability. These are going to be little feet to hold up our base. At this point, I'm going to use some matte black acrylic paint, and I'm just going to paint everything black. coming together at this point, but honestly, the top was just kind of lacking with that single, just one tiered round. I just felt like it didn't compare with the bottom, like it looked uneven. So I picked up some of this, which is an iron-on trim that you can use on the side of your cabinets or something like that. This is actually stainable as well as paintable, and I just ironed it around the side, and you guys, I couldn't believe how absolutely easy this was. It's time to put this baby together. I am going to glue the two bases with the round beads on them together. Obviously, the ones with the feet are going to go to the outside, and then the little beads are going to be going down onto that untouched base. Then we are going to screw in the little arm, and on the arm I also have screwed in the additional small round that has the hole in it. So happy with how this turned out. I paid $12 to $13 to make this, and I have plenty of extra materials with that like trim stuff for afterwards, and so I just think that this is so empowering. I can't wait to make different kinds and other bases for things in the future now that I know how easily it can be done and how inexpensively. I have considered adding a little bit of extra embellishment on the top, but I couldn't definitively decide, so I will be looking at that at a later time. And I will be using command strips to hold the cloche onto this because I'm sure you know I have many adorable fur babies, and I would not put it past them to come and knock this very fragile thing over. So we'll be using command strips to attach it here once we've finished, as well as honestly going to put them on the bottom when I decide exactly where this is going to go to make sure they don't knock it over in general. Though it is really stable, and I could not be happier. So anyways though, it is time to play with some clay. So before we start our clay project, I want to take a second to talk about the materials that I'm going to be using today. So I've always loved the idea of playing with clay. I feel like I have these great ideas and then I start working with it and it looks terrible. The texture's not right. It just doesn't turn out at all. And so it's always been really disappointing for me. And then I found paper clay. You guys, this stuff is amazing. Not only is it so easy to work with, it is also something that you can make super paper thin, thus the name paper clay. So you can actually use it to create things like leaves and flower petals. And it is so easy to adhere to itself. At times I didn't even need to use slip. We'll talk about that later if you don't know what that is. But I totally recommend you guys trying out paper clay, especially if you really, like myself, have tried to aspire to clay and maybe not had the results that you guys had hoped for. I will have this linked in the description below. Wait, before we get started, I have 2 tips that I want to share with you. Number 1, you want to keep your clay moist. I like to do this by having a very lightly damped rag that I just kind of tuck any of the clay that I'm not working with in. This helps to make sure that it is always ready to go. Now you want to make sure that your rag is not wet, because then you will find that it will kind of change the whole texture of your clay and ruin your project. So just don't do that. But you do want to keep it lightly moistened. Now, another thing that I have that's a tip for you is when you first get your clay out, it's going to be hard and not really that easy to work with. You are going to need to kind of knead it in your hands, roll it around a little bit, and it will become more and more pliable and easy. First thing that we need to make is a guide piece so that I don't make my clay work too big. So I'm going to be using the top of my cloche to trace it out on a little piece of paper, and then we're just going to cut that out and use it just to kind of keep a guide to make sure that I don't overdo here. This is the butterfly that I decided to use today. Isn't it so pretty? Now I want this to appear to be flying, so we're going to use some wire to hold it up. And first I took off the hook that came on it and I trimmed off any extra that kind of came out of it. And we're going to be using a leather tool to widen the cavity inside so that I can shove wire inside of it and make it stand up. Once the wire was securely inside, I took a long strip of the wire and swirled it at the bottom to kind of create a base for the butterfly. The first clay that we need to form is the base that's going to hold up our butterfly, and it's honestly what we're going to attach any of our other little details to as well. And I'm going to be using a mason jar lid as my cookie cutter. I cut 2 pieces out that were really thin and kind of sandwiched our swirled wire at the bottom of our butterfly base inside of them, and it worked absolutely perfect. Now that we finished the base for that butterfly, it is time for the details, which I honestly think is the fun part. I'm not going to be showing you every little detail that I make because frankly that would take forever. But I will show you kind of an in-depth version of how I created my flowers as well as my mushroom. The flowers were super simple to make. I flattened out a very small piece of clay and spun it around the end of a small piece of wire about the length of a toothpick. And then I came in with grooming scissors. I don't know if that's the official name. That's what we're calling him because it came with a nail cutting kit. And I cut up like around the edges of the clay, and I used that to then spread out and create petals. And I continued this process, making small layers of clay, wrapping it around the flower and cutting it to make petals until I felt like it was full enough. Then I used the wire that I had and kind of poked it into the top of a tissue box to hold it up. And I took the exposed wire that was left over and kind of went over it with extra clay to create our stem. Then it was time to make the leaves, and to do that I took a small circle of clay and used a fondant tool to make them ultra thin, almost like as thin as paper. And I went along the center of them to create that like crease that you see in a leaf and attached them to the flower. You might be wondering, how am I attaching this clay together? Well, in a normal circumstance, you'd be using a technique called scoring as well as something called slip. I did score the areas I was going to add together, but I found that just a little bit of water on a paintbrush worked great to adhere everything together, and I didn't need to use slip at all. Now, if you're wondering what the heck is scoring and what is slip, scoring is where you kind of create texture on both of the areas that you are going to attach to one another. Then you generally follow with slip, or in this case, water, putting it so it just kind of moistens it, and then it helps it all mold together. I don't know why, I just know that's what my art teachers have taught me. So I'm sure there's a good reason, but I just know it works. Now, if you're wondering what slip is, it is where you take old clay crumbles and you kind of mash them up and put them with water, and it creates a very thin paint-like texture, and it acts almost like a glue to help stick things together. But as I said, I didn't need to use it this time. Yay for me! I used the extra unexposed wire that was holding our flowers up into the tissue box to attach it to our butterfly base. I just folded them in one direction and secured them with clay. Your clay is starting to be a little too crumbly and dry, just go ahead and take a wet paintbrush and just lightly go over the area and smooth it out with your finger. And I think in most situations you will find that it's a quick and easy fix. Now it's time for me to show you the mushrooms I created. So to do this, I started by making a stem that I molded around a wire. And then once I had the shape that I wanted and felt like it looked like it would be on a mushroom, I came back with those little scissors and cut all around the slides ever so slightly to create a texture to the base. I don't know what this effect is called, but I've seen it on mushrooms and I wanted to recreate it. For the top of our mushroom, I took a small ball of clay and used that round fondant tool to kind of push in from the bottom and shape it into a mushroom top. Then I took a leather tool to create the texture underneath that kind of gave the impression of spores. And this also doubled by scoring the bottom of my clay and made it really easy to attach to my base. I need to, of course, let this dry, and then we are going to come back and I'm going to paint this with acrylic paints. I feel like the painting itself is kind of self-explanatory. I'm just using cheap, simple paints that I picked up at Walmart. This was such a fun and surprisingly easy project, and I cannot wait to hear what you guys think of it. And then after that was all finished, I used some Dollar Tree paintbrushes because once you do this, this paintbrush is dead. And I took some glue and kind of just put it all over the base of my project and sprinkled crushed moss on top to give it a realistic look to my piece. And this is done. All of our stuff is complete and it is time to put this bad baby together. So this is super simple, obviously. We're just going to be adding our little butterfly piece inside of the cloche, and then I'm going to be using those command strips I mentioned earlier to make sure this baby sticks on here without being knocked over by a cat. Though it does seem like it is, as I said earlier as well, very stable. I'm also going to be using a little bit of hot glue just in 2 small pearls on each side to help make sure that they don't knock the glass off of this. You don't want to add a lot because this is a fragile glass, but I also don't want to not add something because I know my cats. Yeah. That you really enjoyed today's content, and I have tons more stuff coming your way. I have been kind of on a little bit of a hiatus, but I am coming back with regular content, and I am just so excited to share it with you. And don't forget to hit that bell because then you'll make sure to have every notification when a new video hits your way. I don't know my exact days yet, so that's a real key thing. Most importantly though, my friends, thank you for spending your time with me, and I hope that you have an absolutely magical day. See you next time.